Hey guys, tonight we're diving into a time that makes modern life feel like a luxury cruise. Medieval times. Imagine waking up to a world where you don't just have to worry about traffic or your Wi-Fi being slow, but about getting your teeth knocked out for saying the wrong thing or catching a disease because you touched a rat. So, before you start complaining about your work emails, take a second to like, subscribe, and maybe leave a comment telling me where you're listening from. But only if you actually enjoy what I do here. Seriously, no pressure. Now dim those lights, switch on your fan for some soft white noise, and get comfortable, because we're about to throw you back in time. But before we get started, have you ever wondered what it was like to live in a world without Netflix? No grocery stores, no comfy couches, and no hot showers. How did they even get through the day without all the creature comforts we take for granted? What did they eat? How did they sleep on a bed full of bugs, or worse, fleas? Could you survive a day as a peasant? Or would you drop dead from sheer exhaustion or bad bread? What if you had to fight off wolves with nothing but a stick? And now, congratulations, you've just woken up in 1347, the year everything goes sideways. You've got no shoes, no soap, and you've just stepped into a pile of mud that could very well be someone's leftovers. Good luck. Welcome to your medieval morning. You've just woken up on a floor made of straw that's probably housing a rat or two. The smell of wet mud and something questionable fills the air. You stretch and immediately regret it because your muscles feel like they've been used to mop up the town's sewage. And speaking of sewage, it's not like you can just walk to a nice, clean bathroom. Nope. Today, you'll be dodging piles of animal waste just to get to the bathroom, which is basically a hole in the ground. So, are you ready for the day ahead? Because spoiler alert, it's going to be disgusting. Now, as you gather your bearings, you notice the cold creeping in. That chill that wraps around you like an unwanted hug. Except, it's not soft and comforting. It's more like nature's way of reminding you that you have no heating, no warm blankets, and absolutely no choice but to face it. The thin wool blanket you've been using for warmth is more of a suggestion than actual protection against the freezing air. You're lucky if it even covers you entirely, and the little bits that do are likely drenched in the dampness from the floor. The moment you sit up, you regret it. It's like your entire body is made of glass, ready to shatter from the cold. And as you stand up, trying to shake the worst of the numbness from your limbs, there's that unmistakable feeling underfoot. Wet, soggy straw that's been soaking up the moisture from the night. You take a tentative step and realize that part of your floor is now officially a swamp. Great. It's only 6 a.m. and your body's already waging war against itself. The floor feels like it might just swallow you up in the murky dampness, and all you want to do is crawl back into your straw nest and pretend you're still asleep. But no, today won't let you. The smell of stale air and mold hangs around you, filling your nose with every breath. You think you've gotten used to it, but somehow it's even worse now that you're awake. Breakfast. You stumble to your food stash, hoping for something resembling nourishment. But surprise! It's probably stale bread, a few moldy scraps of cheese, or a greasy slab of meat that may or may not have been a rat just yesterday. Ever tried to chew through a piece of bread so stale it feels like a brick? Yeah, that's your first meal of the day. Don't worry though, at least it's probably protein. If you're lucky, there might be some kind of soup made from mystery ingredients, which, by the way, is the medieval version of an Instagram food trend gone horribly wrong. Now, as you hold up the piece of bread, examining it for signs of life, or worse, mold, you start wondering just how long it's been sitting there. It's hard to tell. You could break a tooth just by looking at it. As you take a tentative bite, you immediately regret your decision. It's like chewing on an old shoe, but with less flavor and more despair. Still, you chew, because that's the only option you've got. There's no cereal, no yogurt, no fresh fruit. You could try dipping it in your soup, but the soup itself is a gamble. Speaking of soup, if you're lucky enough to have it, today's batch seems like a real winner. It's a curious mix of whatever was left over from last night's feast. Vegetables that have been boiled to oblivion, questionable chunks of meat, and the occasional odd, unidentifiable floating object. Is that a potato? Or is it something else entirely? It's hard to tell, but at this point, it's probably best not to ask too many questions. The medieval diet is a masterclass in not being picky and doing your best to stomach whatever survives the cooking process. At least, if you're still hungry, you can nibble on the cheese. Or, should I say, cheese? Because who really knows what it's made of at this point? It's a hard, crusty chunk that smells like it's been fermenting in a goat's boot. But hey, it's food, and it'll fill you up. After all, you've got a long day of surviving ahead, and you can't do that on an empty stomach. But at least it's a breakfast that will help you appreciate modern-day meals in ways you never thought possible. Now, it's time to get dressed. Don't even think about stepping into a soft, cozy pair of jeans. Oh no, medieval fashion means you'll be donning rough woolen garments that scratch at your skin like 1,000 tiny needles. It's not like you can just slip on a pair of sneakers either. Instead, you'll probably be lacing up some boots that will make you regret every life choice that led you here. Oh, and don't forget the smell. Medieval clothes? Yeah, they're all about the lingering aroma of sweat, dirt, and whatever unfortunate animal was sacrificed for your wardrobe. Have fun with that. Let's start with the tunic, your basic go-to outfit for the day. Picture something that's too big, too tight in the wrong places, and made of fabric so scratchy it could double as a medieval loofah. When you put it on, it feels like a burlap sack with armholes, and it clings to you in all the wrong ways. Sure, you could wear something under it to ease the discomfort, but that would require additional layers. And more layers mean more chafing. So, you're stuck, literally and figuratively. It doesn't help that the tunic smells like yesterday's sheep, possibly because that's the fabric it's made from. The worst part? No one tells you it gets worse the longer you wear it. Hours into your day, the tunic becomes one with your body odor and the stink of the livestock you've been rubbing up against. And then there are the boots. Leather, stiff and probably older than your grandma's furniture, these boots are the kind of footwear that makes you question every decision you've ever made. They're heavy, unforgiving, and the soles are about as flexible as a brick. You've probably been walking for 15 minutes, and already your feet are screaming in protest. And no, there's no arch support or cushioned insoles. These boots are the medieval equivalent of self-punishment. Now, let's not forget the accessories. A belt, maybe a hat, some odd-looking gloves. They're all made of rough materials, and each piece fits like a poorly sewn afterthought. They might not even match the rest of your outfit, but who cares? In the medieval world, fashion was more about practicality than style. mainly because nobody cared if you looked good. You're just lucky you didn't get chosen for the Burn the Witch crowd that day. And besides, comfort is overrated, right? By the time you're fully dressed, you're not sure if you're going to be more comfortable living like this, or if you'd rather throw everything off and just walk around naked. But that's not an option, so you trudge onward, resigned to the fact that the rest of your day will be just as uncomfortable. Welcome to medieval fashion, where elegance is a fantasy and discomfort is a lifestyle. You've probably been wondering, when's the last time I took a bath? Well, in medieval times, the answer is simple: never. Or if you were lucky, once a month. So get ready to experience the beauty of body odor that rivals the worst gym locker room. Medieval people didn't have the luxury of indoor plumbing, so their bathing rituals usually involved a communal bucket of water, some really questionable herbs, and a prayer that you don't get a rash afterward. Enjoy that fresh scent of rot and body odor that will be with you all day. Now, let's take a deeper dive into the luxury of medieval bathing. When you think of a bath, you probably envision a warm, relaxing soak with bubbles, candles, and maybe a rubber ducky. Well, scratch that. In the Middle Ages, the process was more like a desperate attempt at cleanliness rather than a relaxing ritual. Imagine a group of people huddled around a single bucket of water, taking turns to splash themselves off in a process that could be described as massively unsanitary. The water isn't warm, it's not fresh, and by the time you get to it, it's more of a cloudy soup of sweat, dirt, and whatever else you've managed to pick up from the mud-strewn streets. The most you can hope for is a handful of herbs, maybe some lavender, maybe some rosemary, tossed in for flavor. But don't get your hopes up. These herbs were less about making you smell pleasant and more about masking the fact that you're probably covered in more bacteria than your village's public toilet. You take a quick splash, praying the water doesn't make your skin crawl, and then you're done. Now, you're ready to face the day, and that fresh scent you've got lingering. It's not just body odor, it's the smell of medieval life itself. Wet, earthy, and pungent with the reality that a good, clean bath was a luxury you didn't get to enjoy. It's less scent of roses and more scent of survival. But hey, at least you can say you survived the day without contracting some hideous skin disease, right? Now, as you're mucking out the stalls, you realize that medieval animals aren't exactly the epitome of cleanliness. Imagine, if you will, a donkey that's been living in a pen for weeks, throwing hay everywhere and refusing to move out of sheer spite. You have to scrape up the mess with your pitchfork, which is a lot less glamorous than it sounds. It's a tedious, never-ending cycle of feeding, cleaning, and trying not to get kicked in the face by an angry goat. Why are goats so angry, anyway? You don't know, but you're about to find out the hard way as you try to fill their troughs without becoming their punching bag. And then there's the water. Don't even think about turning on a tap. Oh no. Water comes from the well. A lovely, refreshing 10-minute walk each way. But it's not exactly a stroll through the park. Picture the weight of a wooden bucket on your shoulders as you trudge back through the mud, all the while praying that you don't slip and dump the whole thing. You're already sore from all the lifting, the bending, and the general back-breaking manual labor of the medieval world. But somehow, you manage to make it back to the house, completely drenched in sweat and filth. At this point, you start to wonder, why exactly did you think surviving medieval life was a good idea? But alas, there's no time for self-pity. The day is just getting started, and there's a whole new round of chores waiting for you. Now, let's talk about your new best friend, the plague. Yep, the Black Death is making its rounds. And guess what? You've just been introduced. You thought a cough was just a cough, right? Not in medieval times. That cough might just be the beginning of your swift departure from this world. But hey, at least you get a lot of sympathy from your fellow peasants, right before they toss you into a mass grave with the other unlucky souls. Who needs antibiotics when you've got your immune system fighting against rats and fleas? Now, let's get into the details of how you'll actually encounter this lovely little disease. You're probably already feeling a bit under the weather. A slight headache, maybe a fever. And suddenly you're sweating like it's the middle of summer. But you can't remember the last time you had a nice, cool breeze. But there's no time to rest. You've got chores to do, and the plague. Well, it doesn't give you sick days. It just starts eating away at you, little by little. Before long, that cough turns into something much worse. It's not just a cough, it's the death rattle. You'll know it when you hear it, and so will everyone around you. But here's the kicker. You can't even blame the disease entirely. No, in medieval times, the real MVP of your misery is the rat. These furry little guys are living their best life, running around, carrying fleas, and spreading the plague faster than a viral meme today. And while you're just trying to survive the day with whatever bits of food you've managed to scrounge together, those rats are busy gnawing away at your only means of survival, your immune system. There's no hospital, no quarantine, just rats, and the smell of decay slowly creeping up on you. And if you are one of the lucky ones to survive, well, congratulations. You're now a walking target for every other disease that's still lurking. It's not about if you'll get sick, it's when. The plague might kill you, or it might just leave you weaker than a puddle on a hot day. Either way, you're stuck in the cycle. Welcome to the Middle Ages. Now, let's talk about your new best friend, the plague. Yep, the Black Death is making its rounds. And guess what? You've just been introduced. You thought a cough was just a cough, right? Not in medieval times. That cough might just be the beginning of your swift departure from this world. But hey, at least you get a lot of sympathy from your fellow peasants, right before they toss you into a mass grave with the other unlucky souls. Who needs antibiotics when you've got your immune system fighting against rats and fleas? Let's say you survive the plague. For now, it's time to see a doctor, if you can even call them that. Medieval healthcare was a combination of herbal remedies, magic potions, and some seriously questionable surgical techniques. Ever wondered what it's like to get your tooth pulled with a rusty pair of pliers? Well, now you'll know. If you had a headache, they might stick a piece of moldy bread on your forehead to draw out the evil spirits. And let's not even get started on leeching. It's like an ancient version of alternative medicine, but without any of the success stories. First, let's talk about the doctor. In medieval times, calling someone a doctor was a bit like calling a guy with a hammer, a carpenter. Sure, they might know how to whack at something with a tool, but that doesn't mean they actually know what they're doing. If you had a serious problem, your medieval doctor might suggest some treatments that would make you wish you had just gone ahead and succumbed to whatever illness you had. For example, if you were suffering from a headache, instead of just offering you some herbal tea and a nap, they might slather a chunk of moldy bread on your forehead. Why? Well, the belief was that the mold would draw out the bad spirits causing the pain. So, now you're stuck with a headache and a moldy forehead. talk about a 2-for-1 special. And for any more serious issues, well, don't expect much help there either. If you needed surgery, they'd likely give you a shot of alcohol to numb the pain, because nothing says pain relief like a good old-fashioned hangover. After that, they'd pull out a rusty set of pliers and start yanking at teeth, limbs, or whatever else was causing you trouble. No anesthesia, no sterilization. Just hope you're lucky enough not to get an infection, which, let's be honest, you probably will. And then there's leeching. If your blood wasn't flowing properly, or you were feeling a little off, the solution was simple. Let some leeches suck the bad stuff out. They believed that draining your blood was a good way to balance your humors, because apparently everyone's body was full of humors that needed balancing. Sure, it sounds like a fun spa treatment, but when the leeches don't stop sucking and you start to feel dizzy, not so much. So, congratulations, you've survived medieval healthcare. The good news? You might still be alive. The bad news? You'll probably never want to see a moldy piece of bread or a leech ever again. Okay, now let's talk about your status. You're a peasant, right? Well, congratulations. You're at the bottom of the social ladder. If you're lucky, you might get some scraps from the Lord's table, but don't hold your breath, and don't even think about asking for a raise. You're stuck in the dirt, working the land, while the noble class gets to sit in their castles, complaining about the heat or the noise from their lavish banquets. The good news, at least your life can't get any worse. Oh, wait, it can. Let's break it down. As a peasant, your daily life revolves around one thing: surviving. You're working the land, planting, harvesting, and making sure your animals don't starve, while barely scraping by yourself. Your boss. A noble lord who couldn't tell the difference between a plough and a pitchfork if his life depended on it. He lives in a castle, a literal fortress, surrounded by luxuries like soft beds, endless food, and the occasional knight to defend him from an angry villager. Meanwhile, you're over there struggling to find a clean patch of dirt to sleep on, waking up with the sunrise to pick rocks out of your crops and avoid stepping on cow pies. And heaven forbid you get sick, because there's no sick days in your line of work. If you're not feeling well, tough luck. You can barely afford a piece of bread, let alone medicine, and a trip to the doctor will only leave you with more questions than answers, and probably a few leeches. Meanwhile, your lord might be sipping on expensive wine while complaining about a slight draft in his castle. And the worst part? You have absolutely no way of moving up the ladder. There's no working your way up when you're a peasant. You're stuck, generation after generation, while the noble class continues to grow richer and more out of touch with reality. The only thing that's worse than being a peasant: becoming a serf, which is basically a peasant without the slight freedom of leaving their lord's land. So, congratulations again. Your status is secure. At least you'll never have to worry about what to do with all your spare time or money, because you have neither. So, what do you do for fun in the Middle Ages? Oh, it's not like you have Netflix or TikTok to keep you entertained. Instead, you'll find yourself enjoying an afternoon of watching people get executed. Or, if you're lucky, you might catch a local joust where knights bash each other with sticks for your amusement. It's like a medieval version of a reality show, except the stakes are life and death. You could also listen to some minstrels play songs about how hard life is. Spoiler alert, it's always about how hard life is. Let's talk about execution first. Because why not, right? Public executions were the event of the day, and whether you liked it or not, you were probably going to show up. Imagine the scene. A crowd gathers, the atmosphere is thick with anticipation, and the person about to lose their head. Well, they're probably someone who's been accused of something like stealing a loaf of bread, or, God forbid, insulting a noble. It's not exactly a light-hearted affair, but for some reason, it became the must-see TV of the era. The executioner, likely a disgruntled peasant himself, does his work while the crowd cheers, jeers, or gasps in horror. But hey, it's not like you've got anything else to do, right? And that is entertainment. Then there's the joust, a much more sporty alternative to the execution. The joust is when knights suit up in full armor and charge at each other with lances in a contest of strength, skill, and ego. It's like watching a medieval car crash in slow motion. Will they crash into each other and fall off their horses in an epic rolling heap of steel? Probably. Will you get a front row seat to that destruction? Absolutely. Jousting is a prime opportunity for you to eat some stale bread, cheer for your favorite knight, and hope that no one accidentally stabs themselves with a lance in the process. And if you're really lucky, or unlucky, depending on your perspective, you'll get to listen to a minstrel sing his melancholy tunes. These songs usually feature tales of hardship, betrayal, and tragic love. All the feel-good topics, really. Imagine someone strumming a lute and singing, "Oh, the weight of the world is upon me, and I can't find my shoes." The crowd claps, as if they've all been through the same thing. Spoiler alert, they have. So, there you go. Your fun in the Middle Ages might not involve much laughter or relaxation, but it does involve a whole lot of chaos, violence, and songs about how tough life is. Enjoy. After a long, grueling day of trying to survive in a world where everything is trying to kill you, it's finally time for bed. Oh wait, you don't have a comfy mattress, do you? Nope. You get to sleep on the floor, hoping the rats don't decide to nibble on your toes. But don't worry, it's not so bad. At least you're not in a dungeon. And when you wake up in the morning, you can do it all over again. How lucky are you? The floor is your bed, and it's as luxurious as it sounds. There's no soft memory foam, no fluffy pillows, just a rough patch of straw and maybe an old wool blanket that smells like a wet dog. You lie there, trying to get comfortable, but it's not happening. Your back aches from hauling water all day. Your legs are sore from running away from goats that seem to take personal offense to your existence. And your stomach is gnawing at you with hunger, even though you ate what you could at breakfast, if you can even call it that. You shift and pull the blanket over your shoulders, but it's not enough. The chill from the stone walls seeps into your bones, making you wish you had just one more layer of warmth. And then, of course, there are the sounds. The creaking of the hut, the distant howls of wolves, the random rustling of rats sneaking by in search of scraps. Every little noise has you jumping in the dark, hoping it's not a thief or worse, a pack of rats planning an invasion. But what can you do? There's no locking doors in medieval huts, just a thin wooden beam across the entrance that probably won't do much if someone decides to break in. You close your eyes and drift into a restless sleep, knowing that when the sun rises, far too early, you'll get up, face another day of backbreaking work, and continue surviving in a world that really doesn't seem to care whether you make it or not. But hey, at least tomorrow's another day in this delightful existence. So, as you finally close your eyes tonight, wrapped in that threadbare blanket and listening to the occasional scurrying of rats, take a moment to reflect on just how far we've come. The harshness of medieval life, the constant struggle to survive against all odds. Today's world seems like a luxury compared to what they endured, doesn't it? While you lie here in your cozy bed, knowing that your water is safe to drink, your food is probably not trying to kill you, and your biggest worry is what's for dinner tomorrow. Remember the resilience it took for people to just get through the day back then. They didn't have the convenience of electricity or running water, and forget about heating in the winter. If you were cold, you were cold. And yet, they carried on. They fought against disease, hunger, and endless hard labor, all while trying to make sure their families had a roof over their heads. So tonight, when you settle into your soft sheets with a warm shower or bath awaiting you in the morning, maybe whisper a quiet thank you to those who came before, who survived lice, leeches, and medieval food that might just kill you. Because history may be gross, it may be terrifying, and it may make you question why on earth anyone would want to live through it. But it's also proof that people are stubborn, hopeful, and, quite frankly, a little ridiculous. They made it through that nightmare to give you the comforts you enjoy today. So take a deep breath, let go of the medieval stress, and drift off into sleep, knowing that tomorrow you won't have to worry about rats in your bed or the plague knocking at your door. Good night.